Genshin Impacts patch 5.2 is well underway, and while this was a hefty update packed to the brim with new characters, new story and gameplay mechanics, there is still tons to talk about. So light a fire, sit down and brew a coffee of Zhongli's Misty Garden as we pick apart all the good stuff. Ready? Let's go! So, right off the bat, we know you're excited to learn all about the new characters ready to make their mark in Tevyat. Patch 5.2 gave us not one, but two new additions to an already colorful roster. First up is Chaska, a peacemaker hailing from the Flower Feather clan. She's got a whole cowgirl theme going on, but the twist to the tale is that she can be a gunslinger just as well as a sharpshooter with a bow. When Chaska is in her Night Soul's blessing state, her normal attacks deal anemo damage to enemies she locks on. But if you charge up her attack, Chaska shows what she's really capable of. When charged, Chaska can fire up to 6 Shadow Hunt shells that deal a massive amount of anemo damage. In addition to this, Chaska can change the elemental damage in her shells by having every bullet correspond to the element of each character in your party. How cool is that? Her elemental skills are Spirit Rains and Shadow Hunt, while her elemental burst ability is the Soul Reaper's Fatal Round. Let's move on next to the 4-star Auroron. This guy is an Electro Bow user from the Masters of the Night Wind. Auroron is a team player because he builds up Night Soul points from his teammates and uses them to deal electro damage with Night Soul's Blessing. His elemental skill is Night Sling, and his elemental burst is Dark Voice's Echo. Basically, Auroron's very emo-looking guy who can pack a mean electro punch if you make him socialize more than he wants to. Right, that's a wrap in characters. Let's move on next to new world features. You might have guessed already given how we mentioned where both our new characters hail from, but the Masters of the Night Wind and the Flower Feather clan are two new factions we'll be getting to see thanks to patch 5.2. Both of these additions have their own stories, so be sure to check them out when you're exploring Tevyat. There are also two new Saurians being thrown into the mix. For those of you who might be logging in after a good bit, Saurians have a common presence in the lands of Natlan and they closely coexist with humanity. We already have the Yumkasaurus, Tepetlisaurus, Gaholosaurus, and Tetenkasaurus roaming about doing their thing, but 5.2 was generous enough to give us two new varieties as well. The cryo-attuned Ectomisaur and the pyro-breathing Kugasaur. Ectomisaurs have the ability to fly by floating up and making themselves as light as a feather. They're native to Natlan's western cliffs, while the Kugasaurs are found on the northwestern mountain peaks, living alongside Talokan people. Both of these Saurians are very territorial, so make sure to prep beforehand if you plan on visiting their lands. 5.2 also introduces us to a new area on the map called Ochkonatlan, otherwise known as the Center City. Although now deserted, an ancient civilization used to live here and was ruled by the tyrant Okon. Feel free to go and explore, but we warned that a fearsome enemy is very much present here, lurking and waiting for all who dare venture into its territory. There is also a World Quest series to tackle here with the help of a new companion called Kokuik. And before we move on to a new Archon quest, there is also a new phlogiston you could come across in Natalan called Gaseous Phlogiston. These can occur freely or form phlogiston currents, phlogiston wind tunnels, or scorch wind confluxes. Then we're going to briefly mention a new Archon quest named All Fires Fuel the Flame. Don't worry, we're not spoiling the experience for you, but if you're at least level 40 and you've powered through the previous quests, then Chapter 5's interlude is ready for you. Also, there is a healthy slew of events taking place in 5.2, with the main shebang being Ectomi Spirit-Seeking Scrolls, which tasks players with various challenges to earn rewards including the event-exclusive 4-star sword, Calamity of Issue. You might even bump into a mysterious Master of the Night Wind when attempting these challenges. There are other events stacked up too, including a series of challenge stages called Adventure Trials, Metamorphosis, a tactical wargaming event called Exercise Surging Storm, and Claw Convoy, an event where you'll be on the lookout for hidden animals. That pretty much sums up events, leaving us with two new bosses to talk about, the Tenebrous Mimiflora and the Tenebrous Papilla. Both are masters of shape-shifting, where the Mimiflora can mimic other monsters, while the Papilla can straight up transform into other monsters. Tenebrous Mimiflora can be found scattered around Ochconatlan and will normally look like purple versions of regular enemies. To defeat it, all you gotta do is use any elemental attack to break its Void Ward, which will make it transform back into its original state and become vulnerable to a killing blow. The Tenebrous Papilla is a much more formidable enemy. This creature is a purple-black monster that descended from an alien world, so it's only fair that it has its own lair. The entrance to Mr. T. Papilla's lair is at the bottom of a cliff just southeast of the Flower Feather clan's settlement. Simply drop down to the very bottom to find a large opening on the cliff's face and get your game face on. Hoyoverse is also focusing on supplementing Genshin Impact with small but very much appreciated quality of life updates. They made several notable changes to Genshin's gacha system and battle pass in patch 5.0 and 5.1, followed up with improvements to the Spiral Abyss and Imaginarium Theater. And now we have 5.2 continuing that trend with updates to elemental reactions. We all know it's been too long since Cryo got its fair share of buffs while other elements enjoyed the spotlight. The funny part is that Hoyo is still not buffing Cryo, but 5.2 did introduce some very radical debuffs to OP elemental reactions like Superconduct and Shatter. The game plan right now very much looks like Hoyo is trying to dampen other elements and their reactions to slowly, yet surely nudge Cryo back into the meta. Let's hope future patches add to these noble efforts. There's also the ever-present problem with the artifact system and how they're handled in the game. Not all 5-star artifacts are made equal, and most roles tend to be undesirable. As such, version 5.2 is adding a way for Genshin Impact players to lock 5-star artifacts, thus preventing them from being destroyed when used as material. Plus, players will now be able to mark their most used artifacts as favorites, which will pin them at the top of the player's inventory for some hot swapping when need be. Well folks, that's a wrap on patch 5.2 and all the updates it has brought along with it. From new characters teeming with potential to new foes ready to be justly smacked, Genshin Impact is definitely making all the right moves to become a game that's hard to put down. Not that it doesn't do that already though. What do you think about the latest patch? Did we miss something, or do you think differently about anything in the video? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.